Hey everybody, welcome back to the Women Warrior Sessions. I'm Melanie Teichroeb, and I bet the first question you're asking yourself is, what are the Women Warrior Sessions? I'm so glad you asked. The Women Warrior Sessions is a 5-part series that I am privileged to host. I interview 5 women from within my community who are doing amazing things. So we've got artists, therapists, social justice warriors, just to name a few. And the benefit to me is the opportunity to spend time with these amazing women. The benefit that I hope you all get is insight into how these women think and what propels them to do the amazing, important work they do. I am still learning the technical aspects of self-producing a video series. So, the editing is still creative. I'm choosing to make that an artistic experience for myself. Hopefully it feels that way for you too. I am grateful that you're here. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel, Melanie Teichroeb, so you can stay up to date with everything that I'm producing and putting out there. It's all exciting, and it's a pandemic pivot, but one that I hope still serves people. That is my great hope. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Angela.
So my definition is that nobody owns me, nobody owns my time, nobody owns my decision-making capabilities. So I just try to have an ongoing dialogue with them about being female in the world and shifting the way I talk, mostly about myself. So when they were really little, I was very, very concerned about them having, all that media influence about the way women are supposed to look. And so I always talk myself up about the way I look in front of them so that they'll see that that's fine to be like that.
Yeah.
That's sort of my first step with them.
That's very empowering. Then I want to ask you how you take that feminism into your job as a social worker.
So that's sort of rooted in more like the social justice aspect of it. So women bear like quite a large burden, especially in regards to poverty. If you don't have enough money for things, it's often women who are either making up the shortfall with their time. Like daycare is kind of the classic example, like as if it's only the female's responsibility to give up their time to
Right.
replace that lack of capacity. So really the way I look at it in my work is that resources should be distributed evenly and equitably. And so I work quite hard to help people achieve that.
How is that a challenge?
It's very much a challenge. I mean, the system is sort of set up to profit, some people profiting off of the labor of others. And the way that you keep a labor force weak is by not distributing the resources to them. So that's how you have your working class and below that. And so to try and lift people beyond that is really challenging because it's not actually, there's no way for that to happen. If you're in a poverty situation, really things are working against you all the time to keep you in that poverty scenario, especially with things like healthcare. If you hurt your back and you're poor, your back injury is going to last forever. Whereas if you hurt your back and you're able to take time off, you can fix it within a few weeks or month. So
how is it working with the physicians?
yeah, it's nice to have different routes. So yeah, doing the like one-on-one with people, and then with the physicians we do sort of more system approach, and it is a really nice combination.
And I imagine the physicians are so grateful to have you advocating for their patients for them, you
Yeah,
know.
we have quite a good team here with the social worker role, and there's a mental health nurse, and that's pretty powerful when you combine it with the doctors.
How has it been for you and your teammates, you know, trying to support people during these hard times?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a pretty hard year for everyone. It has certainly been hard for us here, but it's been very hard for people, at home alone, or they've got kids in school, or one of their family members is immunocompromised. Like, this has been just a really hard year.
Yes.
And I think the hard thing is to keep reminding yourself that this has been really hard, and we all feel bad, and that's just where we're at, and that's okay too. Like, we don't have to be superheroing our way through this. The only goal is to not die.
Yeah. That sounds so simple, but I imagine for many people it is a real challenge. Do you work with many male social workers?
No, I've encountered some. I think it probably comes more from the fact that, like, social work used to be a volunteer position that rich white women did in their spare time, and so was never actually valued as a labor position. And so now, over time, more men are getting involved with it, but uh, that's how it started, really. So it wasn't even
Well,
valued as a job.
that's because it's caretaking, and
Yeah.
that's traditional women's work.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, patriarchy.
It's insidious.
It is. You say that you try to mitigate the effects of poverty on people. I also kind of feel like you're trying to mitigate the effects of shame on people as well. Does that feel accurate?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, that's a little bit more rooted in childhood trauma, though, because that's a pretty big producer of shame for so many different things. So, yeah, that's something that I'm definitely always working to try to help people process through.
Well, next week we have Kelly Price as our guest, and she's going to be
Oh,
talking about the impact of trauma and reclaiming your power by
yeah.
working through trauma. When people come to you, do you check in with them around have they been traumatized in their lives, and how has that affected where they find themselves in their lives? Do you check in on that?
Yeah, it's a pretty standard question for me. I usually just ask, do you have childhood trauma? It's just a yes or no. You don't have to explain it,
Yeah.
because it is completely shifts the way people interact with the world. Really, almost entirely changes how people are.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a pretty crucial piece of information to have when I'm working with somebody.
So what gives you the strength to advocate so fiercely for your clients? Where does that come from?
I would say my main strength is sort of an undeserved privilege of, or not undeserved, but like, I didn't have anything to do with it. I mean, it's not my, is that I don't actually have any childhood trauma,
Yeah.
and the position that puts you in is so much stabler. I can just close my eyes and not relive something horrible. And that
Yeah.
is immensely, like, that is the biggest gift anybody could have. There's lots of ways to have strength too. I think that's just actually the easiest way. When you do have the trauma, you can get your way to the end of it, but it just takes a lot more work,
Yeah.
like years and years of work, and to just not have ever experienced that.
Yeah. I'm really glad you don't have any childhood trauma because
But it's
we need you. Well, and what happens if, and this doesn't have to be someone who's experienced childhood trauma necessarily, but what happens when there's someone that you can't help?
Yeah, I don't love that. I mean, usually I end up feeling quite frustrated and angry because generally speaking, one of two things has happened. And one is that there is no help.
Right.
That really bothers me because we really could help everybody, but we've chosen sort of not to in some respects. Or that they are so traumatized that I actually don't have the skill set for them because it is a very complicated thing.
And how does that impact you as just a human, much less as a social worker when you hit those walls?
I think it makes me really cynical. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
really cynical. Like what I was saying earlier about how, we just are maintaining this working class and people are profiting off of other people's labor. I get really wrapped up in that and stuck in that place. And then I start seeing kind of everything in that light.
One of the tools that I see in keeping poor people oppressed is the use of the tool shame. Do you see people coming to you asking for help, feeling shame?
Very much so. And, especially with women, we're kind of conditioned to, what's the term for it? Like overstretch yourself and take on responsibility for things that don't really have anything to do with you. And so you're sort of always in this position of needing to be the one managing as much as humanly possible, if not beyond, except, that doesn't give you any time to manage your inner self because you're working for everyone else all the time. And so then when you're needing something yourself, often people are feeling like they're going against what they should be doing, which is caring for everybody else. And so lots of women just won't even ask for help. And or maybe they have and they don't get it because the expectation is that they'll manage it. And they do, much to
Yeah,
their own detriment.
yeah. And if they do have to ask for help, they're apologists. I am so sorry. I am putting you out by asking you for this help. I'm so sorry. I
Mhm.
just need it this one time. I'll never ask again. Or, all the different justifications that you could imagine people saying because they feel so badly about having to ask for help. So, what do you do when somebody comes in and you just see that shame flag waving right off the bat?
Well, often people come to talk to me and actually will apologize for taking up my time,
Right.
which is kind of odd because it's literally what I'm paid to do is sit and listen and help people navigate issues and still very, very apologetic. Um, and so I just try to address it at the root, right? Like feeling shame about things isn't really helping the scenario. And you got to kind of get beyond that to what's the issue. Do you feel bad that you're using my time? Do you feel bad that you can't manage it yourself? Where are we here? And then we can just talk our ways through that.
And then in terms of getting people the help that they need when they come and ask for it, this is the part where I feel like your warrior spirit probably kicks in hard, and that is in the advocacy. How often do you really have to kind of gird your loins to do this work?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because if I'm trying to help somebody else get something, um, I don't have to psych myself up at all. I usually have to calm myself down. Um, if I'm trying to get something for myself, though, that's when I have to psych myself up. It's so easy for me to go after something for somebody else, but much, much harder for myself. So that's kind of an interesting thing.
Well, that my first thought when I heard you say that was getting ready for battle, and that adrenaline rush that you get when I'm gonna don't I it's not even a concern. I know exactly what this person needs. I'm gonna go after it. I'm gonna get it. It's like this, an adrenaline rush to do your job and help this person. What would it be like if we could do that for ourselves? Oh, I
Yeah.
I need a nap today. I'm going to go and I'm going to have that nap. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a ridiculous example, but are you ever able to take that same energy from work and apply it to your own life when you need something?
Yeah, I would say I can never quite get to the same level of ferocity that I can for somebody else, but it does help me to think, if this was somebody else, what would you do?
Right.
And so that's a little bit easier. But sometimes I have to get a little bit aggressive on the phone with my tone, and that's a lot harder to do when it's for me, because then I get into the feeling bad because I'm making somebody else uncomfortable.
Ah, okay. So making somebody else uncomfortable when you're doing your job.
Yeah, as if that was my responsibility to manage their feelings.
Uh-huh.
I can logically rationalize myself backwards from it, and that's not my responsibility for their comfort. But I still end up in that place over and over again. But that discomfort with making somebody else uncomfortable is the same as the overextending yourself and managing all the scenarios at once. You're managing somebody else's experience, um, internally, which is,
Yes.
I think, a very typical thing for women to do.
Is it your fierceness, your clarity, your steadfastness that is hard for people on the other end of the phone?
I'm not entirely sure. I do find, though, um, that in the scenarios where I have to be sort of fierce about it, people do want to get off the phone as fast as possible. And I still use this tone of voice, right? Like, I never raise my voice. There's no yelling. It's this voice. But people don't love it that much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think sometimes my success is that people are very uncomfortable talking to me because I won't really stop, and I sound like this, and they get nervous. And
Well, you sound unapologetic.
I think so.
Yeah, you do not sound like a woman filled with shame advocating on behalf of your clients.
Yeah. So part of my the way I speak and my tone of voice, this is so awful in a feminist talk, but I've actually modeled after the way I hear men communicate. They tend to be more successful at holding space in a room, and so I actually try to model my tone of voice specifically after the way they speak.
When I was getting ready to perform Shield Maiden, I was watching I was watching concert videos of the band Queen because Freddie Mercury commands a stage better than almost anyone I've ever seen. And it's hyper masculine and he's, you just see him grounded in this knowing of himself. 800 million eyes are on me because I'm the shit. For women to do that, that really does push buttons, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And when I use my sort of more feminine tone of voice, that's when people are more willing to interrupt me when I'm right in the middle of saying something. Whereas when I even stand more aggressively as well. But one thing that I've also adopted doing is never stopping my sentence when somebody interrupts me, just continuing to talk right to the end, even if it's right with them, which is so much harder than I ever thought it would be, because I noticed that I'm very conditioned to just stop speaking when somebody else starts. And I think that's partly be respectful of them, but then people will not be respectful of me speaking. So I have to keep talking over people, which is very uncomfortable for me.
Yeah. I can understand that. It's interesting how um, communication is such a key part of your social justice warrior job.
Hmm.
Communication, but it ties in perfectly with this idea of um, how we can be apologists for ourselves, how quickly we will, oh, sorry, no, you go ahead.
Yeah.
No, you, right?
Yeah. Or you kind of undercut your own statement at the end by saying, like, if that makes sense to everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
It's way harder to stop doing those things than you kind of imagine it would be.
Absolutely. I just can't thank you enough for your time, Angela. It's been such a gift to be able to connect with you. I know you socially. We have raised our girls together, and so I've seen you on field trips and we've had great conversations, but it's been such a joy and a gift to be able to dial down. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah.
That's sort of my first step with them.
That's very empowering. Thank you, Brenda, for pointing out that I wasn't recording. And so, Angela, because I wasn't recording, I would like to go back and ask you what your definition of feminism is.